Good morning, everyone. Today is August the 30th, 2021, and today we will be covering quite a few different pieces of news because I haven't been updating you guys for a little while. Sorry about that. I just wasn't anywhere near my camera. So, let's start off with our usual topic of interest, aka Afghanistan and what's going on there. And then, of course, we will continue from there on to other world news and etc. So let's start off with the fact that a terrorist group, ISIS-K, ISIS-K, has claimed the Kabul bombing and is recognized now as a threat to the UK, warns a former army general, this is according to The Independent, but also the USA used a drone strike against a place where there was allegedly an ISIS planner, someone who was planning these attacks and etc. They reckon it's the person who actually planned that specific one, and this specific drone strike was, of course, seen by the new Afghani ruling class, let's put it that way, as a clear attack on Afghan soil. So there are multiple problems behind this, namely the fact that, of course, that puts them theoretically back at war, because you don't attack a country, in a country's soil without permission, unless if you're at war with them. So needless to say, there's a lot of hassles going on between those two countries, which is kind of to be expected, I guess. And speaking of the refugee situation, an Afghani woman who was headed to the UK gave birth at 30,000 feet, aka cruising altitude. So on her way to Britain, she gave birth in the air, and apparently, according to some high-ranking military officials in Afghanistan at the moment, so these are US ones, the US President Joe Biden has released a statement saying that there is a very high risk. He says it's highly likely that there will be another attack on the airport within 24 to 36 hours. This was published a day ago on RT, and I'm waiting to see if there has been any updates on that. Now, getting a little bit further away from the direct situation there, the Pope of Rome has actually called on all Christians to pray for Afghanistan, and he even called for a fast, which is not something he does very often. So that was quite interesting, and he said it's with great worry that people are looking upon the suffering that's going on there. So it's nice of him to step in, let's put it that way. Now, continuing ahead on just a few things that have been happening, let's look a bit at the... actually, I have two pieces of news out of Russia that are quite interesting. So, Russia is going to change their policies regarding electric vehicles in a move to support them and support people who have bought them with, for example, rebates. So, rebates on the prices of purchase, but of course also on, for example, cheaper electricity. And apparently they will also have toll-free roads, so they will not need to pay tolls when using major roads. So that's a very interesting advance there, because of course the more these things are subsidized, the more these things are encouraged by governments, the more people are going to be interested in actually doing them and making those shifts. For example, here in Korea, I don't know what the governmental support is. What I can tell you is that there are an enormous amount of EV car chargers. I mean, they're pretty much everywhere. Most parking lots have at least one or two. So it's clearly encouraged, which is honestly, well, if that is the way we're supposed to go, then it's clearly a good thing. I don't specifically position myself on that simply because there's a lot of contradictory research based on the price of making batteries versus the price of, the pollution levels and etc. But currently, it does seem like a good idea. Now, another thing that's been happening in Russia is apparently, well, next month they have their parliamentary elections, and apparently, according to RT again, there's a few cracks that are happening in the pro-Putin ruling party, and there's the possibility basically of the very high majority that he has backing him to actually no longer be there. So it's possible that the Russian president's backing from the parliament will not be as strong anymore, if existent at all, namely if, for example, the presidency changes, which seems to be a possible outcome of this situation. It's a bit difficult to position ourselves on that these days because, of course, that's quite a way away. Now, getting through to a few unrelated to those things situations. Well, actually, I have some news out of South Africa as well, China, and Brazil. So let's start with Brazil. The Bolsonaro, not entirely sure how you're supposed to pronounce his name, has said that with the upcoming elections next year, he's either going to be killed, arrested, or re-elected. That's a very wide scope, let's put it that way. So he's currently basically thinking that he's either going to die or go to jail or become president again. Considering the popularity levels he's had, I'm not exactly sure what to expect there. Let's put it that way. Yeah, that's Brazil for you. Now, actually, this is a situation happening in Afghanistan as well, and it's quite an interesting one actually. So an ex-Marine known as Penn Farthing had started up a very nice animal shelter, and he, after asking to evacuate both the pets and staff to the UK, he kind of got blocked out and left a very, let's just say, angry message for the government, saying that they are blocking the evacuation and they're basically just not making enough efforts to arrange flights and etc. Now, how do we know about this? Well, there is apparently leaked audio of him speaking about some of the political leaders in the UK. So that's kind of how we know about it. Again, there needs to be more information about these things for us to really cover them in further details. Now, staying on some of the UK related things, there's a current vote that is being requested. It won't necessarily happen soon, but there is a vote that is being requested on whether the area of Northern Ireland, so Northern Ireland country, should remain within the UK or not after Brexit. So for those of you who don't know, basically since the UK left the European Union, there's kind of been a sort of palpable difference in the way Northern Ireland and the rest of the UK is treated compared to Europe, because of course Northern Ireland shares a land border with a European country, aka the Republic of Ireland. So because of that land border, it does make it a little bit more difficult for them to enforce a strict border policy, considering the fact that that there are people who literally cross that border every single day to go to work. So I mean, if you would have to, basically have a visa and get your passport stamped every time you want to go to work, it makes a lot of things impossible. That's not how it is currently, but it would make a bit more sense in some ways for Northern Ireland to also become fully independent from the UK and regain access to the EU possibly. But apparently Scotland has ideas of having a referendum as well. That kind of popped up and down on the news, like it popped in and then popped out again. I'm not too sure when or what's going to happen there, but it does seem like they want to do something. Now, a quick trip to the US shows that in California, a mother had to fight off a mountain lion with her bare hands to protect her 5-year-old son. So this mountain lion came and attacked her 5-year-old, and she had to fight him off, and the lion in question was then later shot by wildlife officers. But the simple fact that this happened and that she managed to fight him off with her hands is quite impressive. I mean, 30 kilograms mountain lion, I wouldn't want to be on the wrong side of that. Now, let's move forward, and this is a situation currently happening in China, and one of the largest universities in China, which is Shanghai University, has asked to research the political stance and state of mind of all its LGBTQ plus community members throughout all the colleges within this university. And a lot of people are, well, especially a lot of young Chinese people are extremely worried about what this could imply, because there's been no statement on what this research is for. So all we know right now is the fact that there's simply no further details. Basically, all we know is they want this information. They want to know what the state of mind is. How do you define state of mind? What's the implications of it, etc.? There's no details on that. So that's quite a dramatic thing. Now let's quickly skip over to Japan, and of course this is in relation to the Olympics, well, specifically the Paralympics. There are a few, if I'm not much mistaken, only 2 Afghani Paralympic athletes who made it to Tokyo, but it was a very emotional thing because, of course, a lot of people thought they would not make it and thought they would not be able to compete, and yet they did make it. And this, well, needless to say, the International Paralympic Committee was very, very, well, emotional about this and enthusiastic about getting them there. It was a very important thing. And that was, of course, one of the more positive things. Speaking of funny positive things, let's quickly pop over to the UK again with the fact that apparently, as the UK's major touring season, when the major time when people go camping and etc., was such a huge thing this year because of the COVID restrictions being slightly lifted and people finally going, people started finding that camping in churches was actually quite convenient. So there are some older churches that have been opened up, and basically, yeah, you can. They actually made an interesting word for it, called champing, and yeah, the idea of camping in a church, and apparently you can book space in a church to camp, and basically you get a little bed between 2 pews, and that's where you sleep for the night or nights. Seems quite interesting. Seems like a interesting environment, especially considering the acoustics if you snore too loud. But I guess some people are into that. Not entirely sure why, but they are. Staying in the UK though, and this brings us also back to the LGBT, there is a rise in sexual orientation and gender identity related crimes, and these specific crimes are really leading a lot of people in the LGBT plus community to really, well, to be kind of worried about their security, because there's been attacks in a lot of the gay villages, namely Manchester was one of them, Birmingham as well, I believe, and just the continued danger that these people are being put in is kind of leading them to worry about their situation and like whether they can even still express their identity openly. So that's quite a tricky one. Now, I guess one of the main things we should also cover, and this is a quite interesting one, about the UK's oldest man. He when he was asked what his life, well, how he managed to stay alive that long, basically, he actually had a pretty interesting response. He just simply said it: fish and chips every Friday. And I mean, if you want to go more British than that, I'm not sure you can. So, fish and chips every Friday, guys. Keeps you alive long. apparently. Well, I guess it only works if you're British, I'm sure. It's probably got some form of cash somewhere. Now, speaking of international things and things that might affect you directly, there has been well, a delay slash cancellation of a massive boost that was supposed to happen in the amount of barrels of oil being exported out of Kuwait. Specifically, it was halted from the 400,000 barrels per day increase that was supposed to happen, and of course this would majorly affect economy because the oil infrastructure basically is kind of what runs the world economy. So something like that could greatly influence just kind of all of us. So to be determined what that's going to do to prices of things. But of course, if you're not going to be producing more oil, then the price of fuel will keep going up. And if the price of fuel keeps going up, then transportation costs more and subsequently food. So that's just typically how it works. Now, I wanted to mention a few things out of South Africa actually, and it seems like there's been more and more news on the post-apartheid situation and during apartheid. And just to pronounce that properly, apartheid. There's quite a few interesting bits of South African history that are coming out. One of them is about Sue Dobson, and she was a spy who actually helped. Well, she actually helped clear out the situation during apartheid, and managed to kind of settle some of the internal conflicts that were happening there. So that's quite an interesting thing, and well, her role is well explained through The Guardian, so I will obviously be linking that as usual in the description. I would strongly recommend you guys look through it. And yeah, I mean, she had a very strong role in just acting for the people during that time, which is of course something very positive. And another person is Anya Sihol, who, well, she fought the sexist marriage laws in South Africa, and this is quite recent actually. This is not something that's specifically old, but basically the marriage laws in South Africa have a lot of how do I say this? There's a lot of loopholes and difficulties in them for women, and that's not necessarily, well, how do I put this? It's not necessarily on purpose, but they do exist and they can be exploited. So that leads to some difficulties for women. Now, last, we have 3 little science topics I want to mention. So Japan has had to scrap a enormous amount of Moderna vaccines, specifically 1.6 million doses, because they found a black substance in the vaccines, and this is only a few days after they had found another pink substance in one of the other ones that they cannot determine the origin of. So both times the Moderna vaccine was not clear as it should be, and of course they then immediately halted any form of usage of this. They didn't even use it at all because they cannot determine whether or not it's safe immediately. And anyway, if it has a substance of any color in it, it's clearly not safe. But they are now investigating where this came in and what exactly happened, because it's quite critical for them to know that. Now, something that's also very interesting, and this is for the climate enthusiasts out there, a kind of a leap forward has been done in the production of fusion power. So this is basically the idea of creating tiny little stars in a very controlled environment and using the output that they create to produce electricity. And currently we're actually at 70% of the energy put in that's being produced out, which might not sound like a lot, but you need to understand the fact that the closer we get to beyond 100%, so in other words, like you put in less than you get out, the closer we get to that, the more interesting this technology becomes. And it's become a kind of central investment point for quite a few countries actually, because it requires very little it requires very little fuel, but could theoretically produce enormous amounts of power. I mean, they reckon that the equivalent of 1 teaspoon of water could power an entire city for multiple days, and the only byproduct is air, basically. So, I mean, it can be very interesting, and now we just need to see how that evolves. And our last little topic is that scientists have found that female octopuses, throw shells at males when they are annoyed at them. So, if you're an octopus and you have a shell thrown at your face, you probably annoyed your wife or partner. Just fair warning. And let's just have a quick mention of the weather. Again, this is in relation to the hurricanes in the US. There is a massive exodus kind of happening right now because a Category 4 storm, which is Hurricane Ida, has now forced thousands and thousands of people to flee as it makes landfall in Louisiana. So there is no report directly now of the damage that it's already caused, but clearly there's a very high risk. So not a great thing at all. We really hope that those people will be okay and be able to return home to actual homes and not just devastated landscapes. So to be seen. And this is a last little piece of news out of Korea this time, which is in relation to music. Incheon's annual rock festival will have to be held virtually from October 9th and 10th, and that is simply because of the continued COVID situation here in the country and the fact that it's actually been on the rise recently. So, for now, I would just like to say thank you very much to everyone for tuning in. Also, thanks to everyone who's been watching these videos when they go up. I really appreciate it a lot. It means a lot to me that you guys take the time to watch through these news briefs and just, support the channel. I really appreciate it. Of course, if you would consider subscribing, it would help me a lot. This helps the channel grow. It kind of shows me that there's interest in what I'm doing. I'm sorry for the lack of regularity. That is something I'm going to be working on. I'm going to try and get this to really be a much more regular thing. Having the fact that I'm doing it right before I go to work every day does make it sometimes a bit difficult, I have to admit. I will try my best and make it more regular and a bit more standardized. Now, if there's any topics you would like me to cover, or if you would like me to make a specific video about one specific topic, so do extensive research in it and then make a brief about a specific topic, please leave me a comment, send me an email, contact me, let me know. I'm more than willing to do such things. It would actually be very interesting for me as well. And of course, for now, thank you very much for tuning in. I hope you have a great day. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, everything you want to do, share it around, tell your friends about this, and there we go. That's it for now. Thank you very much. Goodbye.